mentioned Pete Gotti. He was the boss during that period, the acting boss.
He was the acting boss, yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into some more with him, during that time period. We spoke a little bit about it, but are there any other stories, about Pete Gotti during this time that he was acting boss that you can recall off the top of your head? Anything interesting?
Pete had a girlfriend in Rockville Center. And I had a bar in Rockville Center, which Pete was my partner in, called Virago, Verago, Virago Bar in Rockville Center. And so Pete didn't like to go to a hotel or a motel with the girl. So during the day, the bar was closed. We were only open three days a week. So I gave Pete a key. And he used to go into the bar and hang out with the girl. They put the music on and hang out. So one day the cleaning crew got there and they walked in on Pete with the gumata. So the cleaning guy was startled. Pete was startled and he called me up. He says, "You motherfucker." I said, "Pete, I told you the cleaning crew goes in there. You can get a hotel in Rockville Center on Sunrise Highway for $90. So it's a funny story.
Yeah.
But Pete was, he was a character. He would take Marjorie bowling. He would take her play tennis. I says, "Pete, do you understand you're a boss? Do you understand you're a gangster? How many gangsters are playing tennis? How many gangsters are on the bowling alley?" I says, "Don't let your brother find out that you're playing. You're on the bowling alley and wearing bowling shoes." So one day I went and I caught him at the bowling alley. His face got all red. His eyeball came out of his head. So I used to break his balls a lot. But I thought he was my friend. He wasn't my friend.
Yeah.
He just needed me because he didn't want me to say anything to his brother. Because remember, Pete was coming to my house to get John's call.
Oh, okay.
Quite often. So and he would always, Don't say nothing to my brother, Jew boy. Be nice. Be a nice Jew. I say, you be a good Uncle Pete, and I'll be a nice Jew.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to get into that, maybe another show or something. But, we've talked a lot about, your relationship with John. But once he's incarcerated, Pete, he's the acting boss. You had this kind of tumultuous relationship with him. Like you said, you thought he was your friend, but you're kind of just
listen. He played me and I played him, but he had a obviously when I say he had to talk to me about certain things directly regarding his brother's life, and we'll just leave it at that. And regarding his brother's financial situation and his brother's family. So he had no choice about that. And he didn't know at the time, although maybe he did. John and I, we had a way of communicating when he would call me and in writing, unbeknownst to the government and unbeknownst to Pete and unbeknownst to anybody. So, and John and I made that up when he was in the MCC. Because, when you have the boss's ear, Jesse, and I had that ear. So, that was my line of communication.
Yeah.
And John never forgot that. And nor did I. So we'll get into we could do a whole show on my Uncle Pete.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll talk about that. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting last week, you had a couple letters from Pete that was really interesting, because like I said, we've talked a lot about John and your relationship with him, but, hearing a little bit about Pete and your correspondence with him was pretty interesting.
Well, I told you, Jesse, when I had the restaurant in Freeport, Hudson and McCoy with my friend Frankie Basile, Pete used to sit on with this associate, Emil. Emil was around JoJo. And Pete used to sit on his terrace in his condominium with binoculars and try and count how many people we were doing. But the problem was after 10, there was a problem for Pete because, 10 was Pete's number. So 11, 12, so Emil told me, he says, Louis, I used to have to coax him after that. So one day I gave Pete one of these clickers we used to have. Guys stand at the door to count how many people come in. So as a joke, I says, here, Pete, here's this clicker so you could count. He said, what's this for? I said, so you could count how many people are in the place. So you don't have to strain yourself because you only got that one eye working. He didn't have a clue what I was talking about. It just went right over his head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
But you gotta love him. You gotta love him. He was in over his head. So it went over his head and he was in over his head.